What's up, Taiwan? Thanks for joining us this Mid-Autumn Festival long weekend. I'm Joyce Tseng with the latest news. China's President Xi Jinping says complete unification with Taiwan is, quote, inevitable, while marking the anniversary of the founding of modern China. Take a listen.
实现祖国完全统一是民心所向，时代潮流，历史必然，是任何势力都阻挡不了的。
Xi broke convention to give the National Day speech, which is usually delivered by the Chinese premier. Xi also mentioned both the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, contentious political terms referring to China and Taiwan being the same country. Xi's speech comes just a day after Taiwan unveiled its first domestically made submarine, seen as a major step in boosting its defense. Meanwhile, China has launched its first bullet train line crossing coastal seas, saying it plans a similar link to Taiwan. The new line joins Fuzhou in China's coastal Fujian province with Xiamen, a port city opposite Taiwan's outlying Jingmen Islands. Beijing has announced plans to integrate development between Fujian and Taiwan, which China claims as its territory. Chinese officials say they aim to build a rail link at an early date. Taiwan has responded by calling the plan, quote, wishful thinking. Taiwan's last ally in Africa will hold elections for the country's lower house of parliament on Friday. But with crackdowns on democratic movements, little will change, Harel Hughes reports.
This is Eswatini, a small landlocked nation in southern Africa. Formerly known as Swaziland, it's also Taiwan's last remaining ally on the continent. Eswatini's leader, King Mswati III, has ruled the country for 37 years. He's a strong supporter of Taiwan.
Taiwan is also my home, away from home.
He's also Africa's last remaining absolute monarch. Constitutionally, he is above the law. He appoints the prime minister and the cabinet and controls the army and police. Eswatini has a parliament, but it is seen as a tool for the king. The country is set to vote for the next members of the legislative body's lower house, but many voters there are not optimistic.
There's no democracy in Swaziland. Swaziland is killing us. We work hard early in the morning, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., but at the end of the day, there is no money. We don't get anything. We get peanuts.
Eswatini has the highest rate of HIV/AIDS in the world, and more than half of its people live on less than $2 a day. Calls for democracy have been increasing, and with that, pushback from the monarchy. The largest opposition party has been declared a terrorist organization. Other leaders are in jail or exile. And in order to take office, lawmakers cannot belong to any political party.
I can safely say we are not allowed to be free. We don't have free speech. We are not allowed. Because if you speak the truth, then you find yourself in exile, you find yourself in jail.
Police killed dozens of people during pro-democracy protests 2 years ago. And prominent human rights lawyer and opposition organizer Thulani Maseko was assassinated earlier this year in his home. His death came hours after the king told activists to, quote, not complain about mercenaries killing them. The United Nations has called for an independent investigation.
The authorities must also ensure the safety and security of all Eswatini people, including human rights defenders, journalists and political activists, and protect civic space.
Around 500,000 voters will choose 59 members of the lower house on Friday. But with opposition leaders largely missing and the king's absolute control, little is expected to change. Leon Lien and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
In Taiwan news, a man convicted of killing his family in an arson attack last year is facing the death penalty. Chen Yanxiang was found guilty of setting fire to the building his family lived in last June after an argument with his parents. 8 family members died. The Hsinchu District Court has now handed down the death penalty. That verdict can still be appealed. Death sentences are rarely carried out in Taiwan. Nearly 40 people are on death row, but only 2 people have been executed since Tsai Ing-wen became president in 2016. Taiwan's government is considering letting migrant workers from India into the country. Currently, the migrant labor force comes from a handful of Southeast Asian countries, but faced with an aging population and shrinking workforce, the government wants to diversify the country's sources of migrant labor. It expects to sign a memorandum of understanding with India as soon as October. But rights groups say this won't solve fundamental issues migrant workers often face.
进来之后没有同工同酬，比如说移工的雇主不用提拨6%的退休，用完就丢的性质非常强。第二个，不得自由转换雇主，然后让每个移工绑在每个工作的现场，这完全符合人口贩运的那种脆弱处境。
The all-powerful chip, or semiconductor, has become a matter of national security for some countries. With those governments working to keep advanced tech know-how within their borders, I take a look at how chip schools are being affected.
All in that little, without that computer chip, we got a real problem.
The semiconductor industry has long chased new boundaries of what a chip can do. These little pieces of silicon power everything from consumer electronics to weapon systems. Their importance is why countries like the US and China have been competing for tech supremacy. Through its CHIPS Act, Washington has largely cut Beijing off from its most advanced tools and know-how.
遏制打压是阻挡不了中国发展的，只会增强中国自立自强、科技创新的决心和能力。
But despite a geopolitical feud over chip tech, pushing the semiconductor industry forward depends on many countries combining their strengths. That's because no single company or country can design, make, and package the most advanced chips on their own. And as engineers chase even more powerful specs, collaboration becomes increasingly necessary.
They need the top-level talents in the world to actually solve it, because the problem nowadays, they are multidisciplinary.
To excel in the field, chip students say a command of just physics, electrical engineering, or another STEM subject alone is no longer enough.
当我的线宽变小的时候，它背后的这些基础科学的这些效应，就变得越来越严重，越来越明显。
Chip schools in Taiwan want to make sure their students can take the lead in this highly globalized industry. They're relying on cross-border exchanges to train them, both by attracting international students to study here and by sending Taiwanese students overseas.
We imagine for them to be working for a global company, we would expect that our students to be capable of handling all this kind of collaboration.
But the intensifying tech battle between Washington and Beijing could disrupt these efforts. Future tech leaders may well have to be prepared for a more combative industry environment rather than a collaborative one. Taiwan's government has approved over $550 million to support the country's nurses. The cabinet has pledged to provide that amount every year for 7 years. The goal is to add at least 67,000 more nurses to the workforce. That would put the total number of nurses close to the projected demand by 2030. Taiwan's facing a severe shortage of healthcare professionals, and officials are also working to leverage technology to take on some of the load. Taiwan is celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival, one of the biggest events on the lunar calendar. Egg yolk pastries are a popular food during this time, with their round shape symbolizing reunion. At this bakery staffed by ex-prisoners, the pastries aren't just a symbol, they actually do bring people closer to home. Yu Jinghuang has more.
Baker Liu Chenxian has rolled dough like this thousands of times over the past month. He's making a distinctive mooncake that originated in Taiwan, egg yolk pastries. These pastries are popular during the Mid-Autumn Festival. The round shape of the treats symbolize reunion and homecoming. To grab Mid-Autumn Festival business, many bakeries churn out these festive pastries. But this bakery has a different goal. Established by the Always New Halfway House in Tainan, bakers here are all ex-prisoners jailed for drug charges. They are working here to keep themselves clean.
他就是关了差不多快11年多，所以就是想说，真的还要这样再继续下去吗？已经40岁了，老了，所以就想说， 应该要找一个方式来把毒品戒掉这样。
The halfway house's first step in helping their residents rebuild their lives is to try and reconnect them with their families. Workers there encourage the ex-prisoners to send their earnings from baking home, so their families can see that they are serious about getting their lives back on track. But reconnecting may be difficult, as many of them have been rejected by their families.
从96年的时候开始，家人就开始关的时候，家人就完全放弃了，就放弃我。一次还可以接受，第二次可以，第三次就放弃了。
At this halfway home, ex-offenders can learn new skills and build new friendships, supported by people who are facing similar challenges.
Lü Anken had also been in and out of jail since his 20s. 3 years after staying at a separate halfway house, he became a life coach here. He made that step partially because of encouragement from his son, who he had lost contact with for over 10 years.
他看到我的改变，他觉得时候到了，而且我儿子跟我讲一句话，让我一直记到他。他说，他要我好好的，因为我的过往，当我改变以后，我可以把我的精力去帮助后面的人。他觉得我这样做是一件非常有意义的事情。
To people like Liu, the road home may be long, but he's on his way. He's already managed to reconnect with his son, who Liu hadn't seen since he was a baby. With every mooncake he makes, Liu takes one step further on the road to prove that he's a changed man. Kamashi and Yujin Huang for TaiwanPlus.
A new dance production is using technology to make their show more accessible and enjoyable for deaf patrons. John Ventrias tells us more.
These dancers have a mission: to bring art to all. They're part of a new production in Taoyuan that's using tech to make sure the experience reaches everyone, even those who can't hear the music. Each audience member will get a special vest like the ones the dancers are wearing. The show's director explains the idea.
它还附有8颗的振动器，这个振动呢，它也会展现出这个音乐每一个不同的那个层次，然后产生不同的振动。那这个灯条设计，它会依照音乐给人家的情感，然后给我们的感受，然后去产生不一样的情绪上面的一些颜色。
This is especially meant to make the show more accessible and interesting to deaf patrons. And this isn't just for people in the audience. One of the lead dancers is also deaf.
蓝是一位聋人，他习惯用手语沟通，彼此的身份上面有一些差异，所以我们在工作的时候，我们其实会需要练习更多的默契。
The city hopes this will be more than a one-off, and that it will lead to more performances thinking about accessibility in their productions.
更重要的是能够推进文化平权，或者是让听障的朋友能够参与艺文表演这一块。那我们希望这样子的装置开发，未来可以成为展演中心，或者是全台湾各剧场空间里面一个服务的一些设施。
The show will only have a 2-day run, but the hope is it will kick off a change in the way theaters and directors think about inclusivity. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has bagged its 5th gold medal at the Asian Games in Hangzhou, China. The country's team triumphed in men's tennis doubles. Xu Yushou and his partner, American-born Jason Zhang, beat their opponents from India in 2 straight sets, both 6-4. This is Taiwan's first gold medal in the category at the Asian Games. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Before we go, check out this barbecue event held in Brooklyn, New York to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival. I'm Joyce, and for those celebrating, happy holidays.